It was November. And everything, for me, had long since been cold. I start getting chilly right around September, and I don't warm up until probably June. But even though you were rail thin at the time, nothing ever seemed to make you shiver or cold. You just would walk around wearing oversized shirts as if it was summer. It's something cancer couldn't take from you. It's something the loss of your father couldn't take from you. It's something I couldn't give you, and I suspect maybe I felt that was bad. That I was failing at a basic guy task, which was to be warmth for you. But it wasn't that way. I remember we came back to the house for the first time in months in November, and you didn't like the house, you didn't want the house. It reminded you too much of hospitals and antiseptic, so we found a place. A friend had a cabin, and we went out there by the lake. Why anybody would go to a lake in winter? It didn't make sense. And it was an early snow, thick and cold and enwrapping, and that you liked. You'd walk outside for hours, wearing so little it would rip the heart from me, just because you wouldn't tell me. You'd just walk outside and I'd see you out the window. Jesus fucking Christ, what are you doing? And I'd run outside with coats and boots and mittens. And you didn't need them. You weren't cold. Instead, you'd walk out into the lake and you'd stare off into the horizon and say, sometimes I think I just need to go away and come back and be new again. And those aren't the kind of words I really wanted to hear from you. Those aren't the words that made me think we were going to last in this world. And you kept going day after day. And it made it hard for me to sleep, wondering in the middle of the night if I'd wake up, rush to the window and see your dim silhouette out there, reflected in the moonlight on the snow. But it wasn't moon when I lost you. The sun was in the sky. The snow had mostly melted, but the lake still looked solid, and I saw you out there. To me, it seemed miles from the cabin to the lake where you were, but really it was only a couple 100 feet. And I was carrying the coat, and I was carrying the boots, and I was carrying the mittens, and I was swearing under my breath, but not because I was angry at you, because I was angry at you because I loved you, if that makes any sense. And it wasn't you that fell into the water, it was me that fell into the water. All of the things I was wearing, all of the stuff I was carrying with me, for you, but all the stuff I was carrying was too much for the ice, and it broke, and it shattered. And what had been ice and lake became slush. At some point, you were also in the water, and I don't know if the light gave out beneath you, or if you came to try to save me, but I remember your hair just a little out of reach from me, trying to push. And if you've ever been in slush, it's not the cold that gets you, it's the weight of everything you have. And I was trying to push, trying to make it through, but everything in the lake was keeping me from you, and it's just water. But it was there between us, and I couldn't do it. Some neighbors had seen what had gone on, and they came out with ropes and a sled, and they managed to get out there and pull me out. And for months, I was in the hospital. Mostly the cold didn't do any damage, but the depression afterwards caused problems. And it was a few months before I was out and back home. But just like you, I didn't like the smell of home anymore. I got a cabin close to where I had last seen you, where we'd been together, even if it wasn't quite the memories I'd hoped for. But I found myself doing strange things. Like when I was in the mall, I'd be walking along, and rather than try to wind my way between people, I'd find myself pushing into them. Not because I wanted to fight, it happened, but not because I wanted to fight, but because that pushing against stuff that should flow before me, this is what the crowds felt like, was the ice, was the snow, was the, why can't I go forward and there's stuff pushing against me? And this became kind of an obsession. I found myself doing this at just bizarre times. At the beach, I would sit there and push the sand back and forth just to feel it giving way or not giving way. And when it wouldn't give way, I would pushed myself harder and harder against the sand, trying to make it move because you were somehow on the other side of it. And I knew I could if I just tried hard enough. And this spiraled into a psychosis, a madness. Until one day I found myself in my own shed, behind the house, close to the beach. And I had built myself a box, about 4 feet by 4 feet, and about 6 feet high. And I rented a cement truck. And I stood in the back, and I poured it down at my feet. And the cement poured down, pooled, and rose. And as it rose, I would lift my feet, pull my feet, each time lifting against the cement. And it got higher and higher until it was over the knees and I couldn't lift my feet, but I could still move up and down the thighs, ripping at the cement that would grab to me. And that felt so good. That was exactly what I wanted, and I let it come. I put my hands down into it, and as the cement covered it, I would do the same thing. I would push and pull, push and pull, and eventually it started rising above my chest. Now, it's not water. Cement is heavy, and it crushes at your chest. And I'm not a strong guy, and I could barely breathe as the cement got higher. But this was what I had looked for. This was the ice, this was the sand, this was the crowd, this is everything that I had been fighting against, pushing against. And I reached for you again, and the cement gave way. And even in this little box, in my psychosis and my madness, I felt hair, your hair, in the cement, and I couldn't move. Not because the cement was too heavy, it was. Because there was no way I was letting go of you. There was no way I was going to not get through this fucking cement. So I sat there. And at some point the sun disappeared, and it rained, and rain trickled onto the cement, around my face, and then the rain went away and it became hot, and then it was night. And then the next day, and at some point I passed out. I held onto your hair. Held onto your hair. And at some point, the same nosy neighbors found me. I remember some screaming, but I didn't hear what they said. And I remember the firemen coming in, hammers, chisels. And the last thing I heard, as they tried to pull me out of the cement, one arm stuck obstinately into the coffin I had made for myself, was one of the firemen saying, come on, we've got to get her out. Get her out too.